Hey everyone, George here, and welcome back to the channel. Some exciting stuff coming up here that I wanted to talk to you about regarding merchandise that's going to become available probably sometime around the middle of November. And we're talking about some hats, some t-shirts, and some hoodies, and then some other little trinkets like maybe some coffee mugs, some pens, lots of different little things, maybe even some little stickers that you can put, on the bottom of your aquariums here if you want to have something that's kind of bright and flashy that is really nice. I don't want to have people advertising for me, but I think they're just going to be really well done, and they'll add a little something to a fish tank, or you can stick them in other places as well. I know that when I get stickers or those kinds of things from some of my favorite people, such as MD, Fish, George Farmer, any of those guys, I tend to find little places that I like to have those things, and they're not expensive. They're something that is just always a great addition when you're offering merchandise to people. So, having said that, like I said, this will be sometime in mid-November. And before I started this video regarding some questions that you guys had regarding the tanks, this is really something that I wanted to kind of put out there to give you an idea. It's just going to be that small little logo of mine. It's going to be great for hats, which are going to come in black. They're going to come in denim, and they're also going to come in a green that's sort of an olive green color, which kind of hard to really tell you what that color looks like because I don't have a sample of it. Actually, I do have a sample of it. It'll be more like this style hat right here, which I like because it has the denim down below here, and then this olive khaki kind of color up at the top here. Now, of course, this is one of my favorite vineyards, and it's not my hat, but I did talk to the people where they get these hats from. This is sort of where the idea came from. So, two-tone hat like that, or a black hat, and just basically a denim, one of the ones you can wash. Those are the kinds of hats that I'm going to have offered up first, and we'll see how that goes, and we'll add products. There's some talk about putting some hoodies in there and some windbreakers and things like that. These are going to be so subtle, they're going to be so nice, and they're really going to be really great looking product. I think when all is said and done, when the design team gets done with this, I think you're going to be really, really happy with it, and hopefully you'll buy some. If you don't, you don't, but they will be available. I'm going to buy a small quantity of them to start out with, see how popular they are, and then we'll sort of go from there. But I don't have those available yet, but I will, like I said, have those available sometime in mid-November. So let's get to the video that we're talking about today. Today is going to be answering some questions basically about some of the tanks in my office studio here, and we'll be talking about some of the questions you had regarding some of the aspects of those tanks, and we're going to get to that in just a second here. I appreciate you hanging in there with me today. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great weekend coming up. Stay safe, especially if you're on the West Coast where all these fires are. Where I am, a lot of crazy stuff going on with that stuff. We're not going to get into that, but just stay safe if you're anywhere out here on the West Coast of the United States, and be very careful, because right now there's been a tremendous loss of property and even some loss of lives, which is very, very sad, especially when it's small children. So be safe, be careful, don't light any fires, non-intentionally of course, but I'm just saying be extremely careful. Right now we have a statewide ban in Washington State here on any fires, so anyways, I just want to pitch that out there because as somebody who is public and talks about a lot of different things, I wanted to get that in there for those who are listening, just so that you're careful. If you're under evacuations or they're thinking about evacuating, have a bag on hand that you can get out with very quickly, and also make sure that some of those things in your home that are treasures, I know you can't keep everything, but if you've got beautiful guitars and stuff like that, make sure that you're prepared to get those things stuck in your vehicle and headed down the road with very quickly on short notice, because a lot of times people lose some of their most basic treasures in their homes just because they weren't thinking ahead and they rushed through and they panicked, got paranoid and so forth. So take some time to do that, and good luck to you. Stay safe. We're going to get to that video right now. Hey everybody, welcome back to the channel. I had a couple of people that asked me about these two particular tanks here and wanted to know specifically a couple of things about each one, and I'm going to try to address that a little bit here. Now the first one is this tank over here, and I'm sorry if there's a little bit of glare because I'm sort of doing this by hand, but basically what this is, they wanted to know what kind of soil I'm using here. So I wanted to kind of address this because this one is a little bit more unusual than anything I've ever done before. So I wanted to kind of fill you in on what I've done. So there is about 2 8-pound bags of fluval stratum in this particular tank here, and it is built up all along the sides, going from a very low profile in the front all the way to about 6.5 to 7 inches in the back. And then on top of that, I used some black, I believe it was a Seachem product, and I don't remember exactly what the name of it was, but it's sort of a stone that is covering the fluval stratum, and that is the base at the top there. Now I'm doing that simply because in this particular scape here, if you notice, the centerpiece of this scape is sort of an island of pretty much Anubias. There's a couple of different varieties in there of Anubias, and also some petite nana Anubias, which is filled in here and there, just to sort of give it a nice filled in look and add some depth to the tank and so forth. So one of the things that I would tell you about this is that underneath, and this is the question that was asked to me, what is holding these pieces of Anubias into this island sort of setting? Well, believe it or not, there's a very large piece of wood, and you can see parts of it right down in here that is underneath here. And what I did is I glued that wood because it was very lightweight wood and it would not stop floating. So I basically used some silicone, and make sure you use something that is tank safe, silicone, to attach that to a large flat rock. And it doesn't matter what kind of rock you're using. It does not have to match what you have in the tank because you can't see it anyway. It's really pretty much covered. Once you put it into the tank, you just basically cover it with your substrate. So it's just sort of being used as a pedestal for these Anubias plants. Now, how I attached the Anubias on here was before I put this in the water and submersed it, I glued these all down. Make sure you use a super glue that is safe for tanks. There are a couple out there that are not good. You've got to be really careful about that. Don't just go down to your local hardware store and pick one out. There are some at that hardware store that you can use, but don't just pick one out because you may run into trouble with that. So just be careful and do a little bit of research on that before you go out and commit to anything, because it can definitely be an issue. But basically what I did is I took all of these plants and I put them all in a sort of a bouquet by attaching them to this large piece of wood. I wish I could show you what that would look like before I actually did the planting, but it's really about a 1.5 feet wide by about a 1/2 foot, well, no, I would say almost a foot tall as well. And then the plants are just stuck to it. And then the plantings behind here are swords on both sides. And then we do have Serpae back in this area as well. And then of course some Repens down in the front here. Now as far as the Repens go, I did have some over in here, but these guys right here, these Apistos, now these are called the Orange Flame Apisto, and if I could find the male in here, I'd show him to you because he's very beautiful. This is the female right here. But they like to go around and rip up plants, and this is one of those things, if you add them too soon in your tank, you will have issues with that. These ones over here, I added earlier and they got rooted really well, and then I tried to add some more after the scape into this area here, and basically the ram cichlid that was in here, which I did remove. I had a German blue ram in here, and these Apistos really just went along and just yanked these plants up. So it was really a futile battle to kind of keep things going in here. So that's basically all that's in here. Now I do have some red Rotella that is coming. For whatever reason, it is taking forever to get aquarium plants in the mail here as of late. It just seems like since the lockdown and the pandemic, it has just been harder and harder to get specific plants for whatever reason. You can get a Nubius like it's going out of style here. That doesn't seem to be in short supply or hard to get within a day or so. And anyway, I did want to address that because there were several people that asked me questions about that. I do have some Java fern in the back areas back in here, but I think it has been so overwhelmed by the Anubias and some of the other plants in here that are just thriving. Now I don't have any CO2 in here. I did start this with a CO2 injection, and I only ran that for a couple of weeks to get these plants off to a good start. And I don't use CO2 constantly. I basically use it to get the plants off to a good start before I add fish, and that's pretty much what I did here. And then of course I am using fertilizers. There's a Seachem product that I'm using for fertilizer, and then there's some ADA products that I'm using as well. I don't have those in front of me. I'm being a little bit spontaneous about this video, so I don't have all of those in front of me because I am at my office and I don't have all of those supplies with me here. I do have a certain amount of supplies here in case of emergencies, but those are certainly not something that I deal with at my office. If I have maintenance issues or things like that, which I do once a week with these tanks, of course I will bring my my supplies down to take care of those issues. Now, getting over to this tank here, a couple of the questions that were asked to me was, how am I keeping these repens, which are down at the bottom here, doing so well? Now, again, this really comes down to how much you have planted before you add your fish. There are some apistos in here. I can't locate one. Well, there's one way in the back here, which is a Hansgrohe, I believe, but Hangsloy, I'm sorry, I said that incorrectly. And that is a male back there, and there's also a female in here, and they are a matching pair, but they're like many apistos. When they first get into a tank, they really do hide a lot, and hard to get them to eat at first, so you got to be really careful to make sure that you have a wide variety of foods to offer them. In this case, I use Daphne. I do have them picking at, or at least exploring, the idea of some pellets and other types of food. Now, one of the things that I found with apistos, which was one of the other questions that was asked by somebody on my Facebook page about this particular tank, was, how am I getting these apistos if they're not eating very well? What am I supplementing them with? And basically, I've found that if you use some wafers, and I'm going to show you because most people have these on hand. These little wafers right here are fantastic because apistos like a little bit of greenery in their diet anyway, but these wafers also have vegetables and proteins in them that really will keep these fish in good condition until you can get them off that and feed them something that is much more rounded in diet, something with omega-3s in it. You got to think about that with apistos and with any dwarf ram cichlids at all, because if you want to bring out their coloration and so forth, that diet has got to be really something that has a wide variety of foods that you're offering. Now, as far as the third question regarding these repens that are back in here, these are repens that are just wedged between the rocks. They're not in the soil. Now, I know that people are going, well, how are you doing that? Well, basically what I did is I added the repens into the cracks around the rocks, and for whatever reason, and I had never done this before, I've had a tremendous amount of luck with these plants just absolutely thriving by just being wedged in there. In fact, their root systems made their way to the substrate by themselves. I never planted them directly in the soil, but they have really taken off. And as you can see, there is nothing about these plants that is unhealthy at all. Now, as far as their color, those are not yellow. That's just the way the light makes them look. They're actually, if you're looking at them in person, in fact, let me turn down the lighting on this a little bit. As you can see, they're very green once you get that lighting down to a point where you can really get a good look at them. So everything in here is extremely healthy. Another question that was asked me, and I'll go ahead and address it while I'm doing this, was how did I get the moss on these rocks here? Now, basically what I did is took some of the balls that are used for betta tanks and that sort of thing, and I cut them up and I glued them to the rocks before I placed the rocks in here. And then in little cracks and crevices, like up in this area here, I put a little bit Petite Nana Anubias in here, and I've placed those, you know, in just little areas around the tank, such as back in here as well, and they really make a nice highlight for the plants that are in the tank. And of course, again, with this particular tank, if you look at the substrate, how it goes from very tall in the back, and I always try to go about 6 or 7 inches, and then we have a gradual decline here. And of course, what that does, for those who know scaping, this is something where you get a sense of depth. Now, I use a rule of thirds for everything, or the golden ratio, basically with all of my tanks, because it gives that balance. I've talked about this before. If you want your tanks to look exceptional and beautiful, really try to follow that rule where you have a direction where you have a little height here, you dip down, and then you have a major sort of V-shaped going on as far as this corner here goes. Blah, 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 I can't talk. It is early in the morning here. It is only around 5:30 in the morning, but otherwise I get tremendous glare from the windows behind me, so you kind of have to do this at a certain time of day or it just doesn't look right. There's already some glare, and I apologize for that. But anyways, yeah, so that answers the questions. This plant right here is basically a bulb of some kind. Now, that is an accidental thing that happened with this tank, and it kind of gets beat up a little bit. It isn't torn or anything, but it kind of gets beat up a little bit because it's being pushed by the current out of the flow. I am thinking about reducing the flow in this tank a little bit, but I've had such amazing luck with this tank, and it's so beautiful. I really don't want to mess around with it so much that I destroy some of the beauty of the tank by moving things around too much. I think this has got a really good balance of plants and rock, and there's plenty of videos about this where when you're looking at it, such as from this perspective down low here, you can see what I'm talking about, that it's a really, really pretty tank. When you come up high like this and come at it at an angle, you don't get quite the same effect. Anyways, George here with The Art of Water. Hit that like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the comment button, and of course, do hit that bell at the top so that you know when my next video is coming out. Now, this is kind of a spontaneous little video, and I apologize if I haven't been real formal about what's going on here. I wasn't even ready to be on camera this morning, or I would have talked about this a little bit with videos of myself on here, but like I said, it's 5 in the morning here, and I just wasn't prepared to be on video, but I wanted to get some of these questions asked. I want to talk about one more tank in this office area. Sorry about my mess in here, but this tank here is another tank that I put in recently with some stone that I found over in Montana in lakes. This stone, I don't even know what it is. If anybody knows, leave it in the comment section, but basically it's a stone that is pink in color, kind of a coral pink. It's not like a feminine pink or anything like that. It is more of like a coral pink, and I love it. I really, really enjoy the look of this stone. But one of the questions that I was asked was, what was this stone? And I really don't know. If anybody who lives in Montana or has ever used this stone before, I picked it up out of some lakes over that way. There were just thousands and thousands of pieces of this stuff laying all over the beach over there, and I just decided to bring a few pieces of it home and try it out. And it really, really is one of my favorite tanks as far as coloration and that sort of thing. Now I do have a pair of German blue dwarf ram cichlids in here. Of course, they tend to hide when I come around and do this. Well, here's the female of the two that I'm talking about, and she is just plump. So I'm thinking that these two are probably going to try to spawn here. You can see this female is really heavy with eggs here. So we'll see what happens, but I will update you on that as we go. And then down here, another tank that I have that just has some Peacock Gudgeons, as you can see in here. Love these fish. They're just absolutely beautiful fish. I have 3 in here. This is just a 10-gallon tank, but it's a perfect size tank for this. There's 3 Peacock Gudgeons in here that I've had for almost 2 years now. And basically some floating plants. There is some Repens in here. The white albino Corys, there's 3 of those in there. And of course we do have some snails and some Cichlids in here, and 1 dwarf Plecostomus back there. He's got kind of an unusual coloration to him, but he's not going to get much bigger than that. And anyways, that's pretty much it. And might as well show you this tank over here, I guess, while we're at it. But this tank here is just a 7.5 gallon. It does have some Serpae Tetras in here. I think there's only 5. Oh, we got a loose piece of something floating around in there that broke loose. Pretty much, I think there's just 5 Serpae Tetras in here. They're the long-tailed ones. We do have some Siamese algae eaters in here. I had a little bit of a problem with some hair algae growing, and I turned the lights down on this thing and put this little pad on the top to sort of disperse the light. And I'm telling you, within 5 or 6 days, the fish themselves took care of that problem, and nothing new has grown. If you do get hair algae, one of the things that I've found is if you use a product called Excel by Seachem. I'm not trying to promote anything here, but if you do use a product by Seachem called Excel, you can sort of get a carbon a CO2 sort of effect from that, and that will cut down on that hair type algae. It makes the other plants thrive, and they eat up the resources that hair algae would normally need to flourish, and it pretty much gets rid of itself within a week or so. There's some tricks to doing all this stuff, and if you watch a lot of my videos, this is probably one of the crappiest videos I've ever made, but that's okay. It was, like I said, very spontaneous, and I'm going to keep it short here. I don't want to download a huge video about a bunch of questions about tanks. Now, I have tanks in other places that I don't want to get into today because those were not asked about. The 2 tanks over here, which we talked about earlier, these were the 2 that people were asking questions about, and I hope I answered those questions. If anyone else has any comments, questions, concerns, or anything like that, or think that I just, have beautiful tanks, I get that a lot. I appreciate that. Those are very nice comments to make. A lot of work goes into these, and about every 6 months or so, I like to tear them apart and start over again. But anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. Hit that like button, subscribe, and also make some comments here, because I like hearing from you. I like talking to people and listening to their comments, or even getting ideas from you, because we're all constantly learning as we go here. So I'm going to post this video here in a few minutes. Hope I answered your questions for those that were interested. Again, George here with The Art of Water. Thank you for spending some time with me. Thank you for sharing your morning with me. We'll get this posted, and I hope, like I said, hopefully I did answer your questions on some of the things that I've had several questions in the same category here, and I wanted to make sure I addressed them so that people didn't think that I was being rude and just ignoring what you were asking. So anyways, thank you guys for watching. We'll catch you on the next one, and peace out, man. I did want to add a little something to this video, just a couple of minutes here. If you look at the side view of this, people have asked me what this is right here. This is a Repen, and it is a bronze Repen, and these started out as plants about this big here. I actually bought them at a big box store. I think it was PetSmart, and they come in a little bit of sack with some that gel type stuff in there. And if you are really paying attention to the nutrients in your tank, as you can see, we start with a very short front end, and I like to do 4 inches, at a minimum, and then work my way back to about 7 inches back here. That to me is the best way to get your tank to just look amazing. So coming at it from this side, very similar. I don't have the Repens on this one side here. I do have one right here that is not huge. But the sword has been the center point of this. Since I can see 3 sides of this, I had to have everything sort of looking good. And of course, these basically are just Java ferns that are little baby ones that came off some of my main plants that I have in some other tanks. Real easy to harvest those. If you're looking for Java ferns, just look at the tips of them sometimes, and they have babies growing off them that really add a lot of inexpensive ways for you to, sort of go after your other tanks and get them to look pretty sharp. So I hope that's not too bright for you or whatever. I hope you can see that real well. But anyways, sorry about that. I wanted to answer that last question because I just noticed someone had sent me a question about this particular tank. This one is made by Cobalt. If anyone's wondering who makes this tank, what I basically did is I took a Cobalt low iron glass tank, and I took a Pisces Aquatop filtration system and attached it to the back of this and used it because it was the best way I could figure out to keep the filtration in here, sort of compact and not all over the place. There is spots inside the back of this Pisces Aquatop where you can fit a small heater back there. They get a little bit expensive once you get past 10 watts. On a tank like this, you need something bigger. I don't know what the wattage is on that particular thermostat, but it is definitely between 20 and 50 watts for sure, which keeps this, I think, roughly between 78 and 80 degrees, give or take, depending on how hot the room is and other factors involved here. Anyways, last thing I wanted to hit on, again, thank you. Hit the like button, subscribe button, and the comment button. And if you have any questions, I'll be glad to answer them for you. Thanks for hanging in there with me today. And I promise you, I will not send you a crappy video like this again. I think it was slightly informative, and that was good. But, you know, I don't like sending out junky videos like this. But hopefully you guys got something out of it, and the questions were answered that people were asking about. Talk to you later. Again, we are out.